Welcome back to Lena's Romantasy Collection, where the romance is dark, the alphas are possessive, and the heroines never follow the script. Quick question for the pack before we get into the steam. Do you prefer a golden retriever boyfriend or a grumpy silver fox alpha? Let me know in the comments, and drop a thread emoji if you're listening to this while you should be working. Today, we have a masterpiece. It's witty, it's spicy, and it involves a very bold tailor and an alpha king who takes measurements very seriously. But before we start, if you want to support the channel and get early access to these audiobooks, hit that join button down below. It helps us keep the studio running and the romance flowing. Now, grab your headphones, the fitting room is open, and the king is waiting. Let's read. Chapter 1. The rent notice on Erica Hart's door was a neon yellow eyesore that pulsed with the same frantic energy as her bank account. In the world of high-end tailoring, the feast was glorious, but the famine was a punch to the stomach. She leaned her forehead against the cool wood of the door, her wrist pincushion digging into her skin, and sighed. Inside her studio, heart and thread, the air smelled of spiced pear and warm amber, a comforting, grounded fragrance that usually helped her focus. Today, it just felt like the scent of a sinking ship. "Don't look at me like that, Gatsby," Erica muttered, not turning around. Behind her, a 20-pound ragdoll cat with the temperament of a disgruntled bouncer let out a low, dog-like growl. Gatsby was currently perched atop a roll of charcoal Italian wool, his blue eyes narrowed as if he were auditing her finances. The silence was shattered by the shrill ring of her phone. She snatched it off her cutting table, nearly knocking over a jar of vintage bone buttons. The caller ID displayed an unknown number from the Northern District, the part of the city where the obscenely expensive real estate sat. "Heart and Thread, Erica speaking," she said, shifting into her professional persona. "Erica Hart, this is Elias, Chief of Operations for Valco Industries." A deep, jovial voice boomed. "I've heard you're the only person in the city who can craft a suit that doesn't rip when a man sneezes, and frankly, my boss needs a miracle." Erica's grip tightened on her silver tape measure, which hung around her neck like a shimmering talisman. She knew the name Valco. Everyone did. Desmond Valco was the alpha king of the Iron Ridge Pack, a man whose reputation for being a reclusive, stone-cold tyrant was only eclipsed by his massive wealth. "I specialize in structural integrity and discretion," Erica replied, her heart hammering against her ribs. "But my commission fees for private estate visits are significant." "Money isn't the obstacle, Erica. Time is. The Alpha King hasn't updated his wardrobe since the turn of the decade, and he has a summit approaching. If you can get to the Erie by 4 p.m. today for a consultation, there is a retainer check waiting for you that would cover your rent for the next 3 years. 3 years. The number felt like a boulder lifted off her shoulders. She could finally stop worrying about the bank and start focusing on her secret goal: buying back her parents' old pack house. But then the reality of the client set in. An alpha. Her mind flickered to Gavin, her ex. She remembered the way he had used his alpha status to dominate every room, the way he'd lied and cheated while expecting her to be a silent, submissive omega. She had spent years carving out an independent life specifically to avoid the whims of overbearing alphas. "I have a strict policy," Erica said, her voice dropping to a firm, polite tone. "I am the expert. I do not take suggestions on cut or craft from people who don't know a lapel from a laugh. If the Alpha King wants a suit by Erica Hart, he listens to Erica Hart." Elias chuckled. "Believe me, sweetheart, I'll pay extra just to watch you tell him that. Do we have a deal?" "We do. I'll see you at 4. She hung up and immediately began frantic preparations. She grabbed her heavy, cold steel fabric shears, her most prized possession, and tucked them into her leather roll. She checked her reflection in the full-length mirror, smoothing her athletic frame and tightening her messy bun, which was currently held in place by 2 HB pencils. The small scar on her left eyebrow, a souvenir from a runaway sewing machine needle in her youth, twitched with nervous energy. "Gatsby, stay off the silk," she warned the cat, who responded by yawning. Erica dashed out to the curb where her mint-green Fiat 500, the jelly bean, was parked. She winced at the dent in the rear bumper, a reminder of a distracted driver 3 months ago, and hopped inside. She turned the key. Nothing. A pathetic, metallic click echoed in the cabin. She tried again, pumping the gas. The engine let out a sickly wheeze. "No, no, no! Not today, you lime-colored traitor!" she yelled, slamming her palms against the steering wheel. The jelly bean was notorious for its temperamental starter, but this was a punch to the gut. She was 45 minutes away from the most lucrative contract of her life, and she was currently stranded. Erica looked at her watch. If she didn't move now, she'd be late, and alphas, especially kings, were not known for their patience. Chapter 2. The drive to the northern cliffs usually took 45 minutes, but after a frantic call to a local shifter-run garage and a very expensive emergency jumpstart, Erica was pushing the jelly bean to its absolute limit. The car rattled violently as the speedometer ticked over 60 miles per hour, the vibrations traveling up her arms and making her teeth chatter. By the time she reached the gates of the Erie, she was 10 minutes late. The estate was a sprawling masterpiece of glass and jagged stone, perched precariously over the churning gray waters of the bay. It looked like a fortress designed by a minimalist god. High-tech security cameras tracked her mint-green car as she pulled up to the gate. A sleek black intercom hummed to life. "Name?" "Erica Hart. I have an appointment with Elias." The heavy iron gates slid open with a whisper of precision engineering. Erica drove up the winding path, parked her rattling Fiat next to a pristine, black 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429, and took a deep breath. The Mustang was a beast, pure manual power. It made her Fiat look like a toy. She stepped out, clutching her kit, and was met at the massive oak doors by Elias. He was a large man with kind eyes and a crooked grin. "You're late," he said, though he didn't sound angry. The big man is already pacing. "A word of advice? Don't mention the Mustang. It's his baby." "I'm more interested in his suits," Erica replied, masking her nerves with a sharp, professional smile. "Lead the way." The interior of the Erie was cold, not in temperature, but in soul. It was all polished concrete and expensive leather, devoid of any personal touches. They entered a massive dressing suite that featured floor-to-ceiling mirrors. Standing in the center of the room was Desmond Valco. He was a mountain of a man, 6'5" of broad-shouldered, taciturn power. His hair was a thick mane of black, salted with silver at the temples, and his eyes were a startling, molten gold. But as Erica's designer eye scanned him, she nearly recoiled. He was wearing a suit that could only be described as a tragedy. It was a baggy charcoal monstrosity from at least 2010, the shoulders too wide, and the trousers pooling around his ankles like melted lead. It obscured his swimmer's build, making him look like a block of granite rather than a king. Desmond didn't look up. He was staring at a mechanical watch on his wrist, his jaw set. "You're 12 minutes late, Miss Hart," he rumbled. His voice was deep, like the sound of shifting tectonic plates. It carried the scent of cedarwood and rainy earth. "The jelly bean had a heart attack," Erica said, stepping into the room and dropping her kit on a velvet ottoman. And considering what you're currently wearing, I'd say every minute I spent getting here was a mercy. Who tailored that? A blind carpenter? Elias smothered a cough that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Desmond finally looked at her, his golden eyes narrowing. He didn't move, but the air in the room grew heavy, the alpha's dominance pressing against the walls. This suit has served me well for a decade. I don't care for fashion, Miss Hart. I care for utility. Utility is no excuse for looking like you've been swallowed by a tent, Erica countered, undeterred. She pulled her silver tape measure from her neck. Strip. I need to see what I'm working with. Desmond stiffened. He picked up a sleek black cane leaning against a chair and gripped the silver handle. I beg your pardon? The jacket. Off. Now, Erica commanded, her accountability-focused brain taking over. I don't have time for alpha posturing. I have a summit to dress you for, and you have a frame that is being insulted by that fabric. Stand on the pedestal, arms out, and don't move. I don't work on moving targets. Desmond stared at her for a long, tense moment. He was used to people trembling in his presence. This petite woman with pencils in her hair was looking at him like he was a particularly difficult math problem. You are very bold for an Omega, he remarked, his voice dropping an octave. I'm a master tailor, Mr. Valco. In this room, my rank is the only one that matters. Desmond let out a huff, not quite a growl, but close, and shrugged off his jacket. As he stepped onto the low wooden pedestal, Erica realized she had underestimated the task. Underneath the baggy fabric, he was a specimen of raw, disciplined power. But as he turned, she saw the jagged claw scar running from his right shoulder across his chest. He saw her eyes linger on it and immediately tightened his jaw, his posture turning rigid. I said don't move, she whispered, stepping into his personal space. Chapter 3. The proximity was a tactical error for Erica's heart rate. Up close, Desmond Valco was overwhelming. He smelled of scorched clove and the deep, rich scent of a forest after a storm. It was a primal, masculine fragrance that made her latent Omega instincts hum with a forbidden curiosity. She ignored it. She was a professional. Erica moved with surgical precision. She stood on a small wooden step stool to reach his shoulders, her face inches from his thick neck. She could see the faint pulse in his jugular. Relax your shoulders, she murmured, stretching the silver tape measure across his back. You're holding yourself like you're expecting an ambush. In my world, Miss Hart, an ambush is always a possibility, Desmond replied. He was looking straight ahead, refusing to meet her eyes, but she noticed his fingers fiddling with a heavy gold signet ring on his left hand. He was nervous. The Alpha King was nervous about a fitting. Well, the only thing attacking you here is my critique, she said, stepping down and moving to his front. She knelt to measure his waist, her hand steady as she moved the tape. She could feel the heat radiating off him. You've been overcompensating for your hip injury with the cut of your trousers. It makes you look like you're limping even when you aren't. I'll adjust the rise to give you more mobility. Desmond looked down at her then, his golden eyes flashing. How do you know about the hip? I watch people move for a living. You favor your left side when you stand still, and you grip that cane like it's a weapon, not a support. It's an old injury, probably aches when it rains. Desmond remained silent, but the tension in his frame shifted from aggression to something more complex, interest. Erica moved to the most delicate part of the measurement, the inseam. She had to crouch low, her shoulder brushing against his thigh. The air in the room felt thick, charged with a sudden, sharp electricity. She could smell his arousal, a sudden, sweet edge to the cedarwood scent, and it sent a shiver down her spine. She stood up quickly, her face flushed, and moved back to his neck. She wrapped the tape around his collar, her fingers accidentally brushing the skin of his throat. He sucked in a sharp breath. "You're very efficient," he rumbled, his voice vibrating in his chest. "But you seem impatient. Perhaps the job is too large for someone of your standing?" Erica snapped the tape measure taut. She was tired, she was stressed about her car, and his patronizing tone was the final straw. She looked him dead in the eye, refusing to flinch. "The job isn't too large, Mr. Valco, but you might be. You're stiff, you're stubborn, and you're draped in the fashion sense of a man who gave up in the 90s. Honestly, I usually prefer younger clients. They're more flexible, less dusty. And they certainly don't complain as much as you do." The silence that followed was absolute. Even Elias, standing by the door, seemed to hold his breath. Desmond stepped off the pedestal. He didn't use his cane. He moved with a sudden, predatory grace that belied his age, closing the distance between them until Erica was backed against the cold glass of the display mirrors. He leaned down, his massive frame looming over her, trapping her in the scent of rain and cloves. "You prefer younger men, do you?" he whispered. His golden eyes were dark, the pupils blown wide. He leaned closer, his lips hovering just inches from the sensitive skin of her ear. "They're easier to lead, I imagine. Easier to impress." Erica's breath hitched. She could feel the heat of his body, the raw alpha power radiating off him like a physical weight. "They're just less complicated," she managed to say, her voice wavering despite her best efforts. Desmond's hand came up, not to touch her, but to rest on the mirror beside her head. He bared his teeth in a slow, dangerous smirk. "Maybe so," he growled, the sound vibrating through her very bones. "But remember this, Erica Hart. They might be faster, they might be prettier, but they don't bite like I do." He pushed away from the mirror and grabbed his discarded baggy jacket. Without another word, he turned and strode out of the room, his black cane clicking rhythmically against the concrete floor. Erica stood there, her back pressed against the glass, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was breathless, her skin tingling where his breath had touched her. "Well," Elias said, breaking the silence with a low whistle, "I'd say the consultation went well. Shall I write that retainer check now?" Chapter 4. Erica returned to the Erie 3 days later. This time, the jelly bean had behaved, though the rattle at 60 miles per hour felt like it was getting louder. She wasn't alone. In the passenger seat, Gatsby was stuffed into a large reinforced carrier, emitting a series of low, mournful growls. The cat had developed a sudden bout of feline hay fever, and Erica didn't trust her neighbor to administer the eye drops. Besides, Gatsby had separation anxiety that usually resulted in her expensive silk bolts being shredded. "Just stay in the carrier, Gatsby. It's 1 hour for a muslin fitting, then we leave," Erica muttered as she checked through security. She was led not to the dressing suite, but to a smaller, more lived-in parlor. It featured high ceilings and a gas fireplace. Erica noticed the wall switch was flipped to off, the black ceramic logs cold and lifeless. She set her kit down and opened Gatsby's carrier just an inch to give him some air. "Be a good boy." Naturally, Gatsby was not a good boy. As Erica turned to drape her muslin mock-up over a mannequin, a blur of white and gray fur shot past her ankles. Gatsby, sensing a new territory to conquer, had squeezed through the gap and bolted toward the hallway. "Gatsby, no! Come back here, you overstuffed rug!" Erica scrambled after him, her silver tape measure bouncing against her chest. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a young girl. The girl looked about 15. She had Desmond's dark hair and the same stubborn set to her jaw, though her eyes were a soft, stormy gray. She was wearing an oversized black hoodie and holding a sketchbook. This had to be Maya. Gatsby was currently standing between Maya's feet, his back arched, letting out a surprisingly deep growl at a tall, decorative vase. "Whoa," Maya said, looking down at the cat. "Is that a lynx?" "He's a ragdoll who thinks he's a Navy SEAL," Erica panted, stopping to catch her breath. "I am so sorry. He's an escape artist. I'm Erica, I'm the tailor." Maya looked Erica up and down, her gaze lingering on the wrist pin cushion and the pencils in her hair. A flicker of interest crossed her moody expression. "You're the one who told my dad he looks dusty?" "Elias told me. It was hilarious." "I believe my exact words were ancient history," Erica corrected, offering a small, wary smile. "But dusty covers the basics." Maya actually smirked. She knelt down and reached out a hand to Gatsby. The cat, who usually hated strangers, sniffed her fingers and then proceeded to flop over onto his side, exposing his massive, fluffy belly. "He likes you," Erica noted, surprised. "He usually growls at anyone who doesn't smell like spiced pear." "I like him better than the people Dad usually brings home," Maya muttered, her tone turning sharp. "They're all so fake. Always trying to be my new friend." "I'm not here to be your friend, Maya. I'm here to make sure your father doesn't look like a hobo at the summit," Erica said honestly. "And apparently to hunt down a runaway cat." "Erica?" The deep rumble of Desmond's voice echoed down the hall. A moment later, the Alpha King appeared. He was dressed in a simple black t-shirt and dark jeans, looking far more dangerous than he had in the baggy suit. He stopped when he saw the scene. His daughter on the floor with a giant cat, and Erica looking disheveled. Gatsby stood up, saw Desmond, and immediately hissed. It was a sharp, disrespectful sound. Desmond froze. He looked at the cat, then at Erica. "Your animal is insulting me in my own home." "He's a very good judge of character," Erica deadpanned, though her heart did a strange little flip at the sight of Desmond's muscular arms. Maya laughed, a genuine, youthful sound. "Dad, the cat thinks you're a threat. Maybe you should try being less alpha." Desmond looked at his daughter, and for the first time, Erica saw the hardness in his face melt. It was replaced by a look of profound, aching love mixed with total helplessness. He reached down, and to Erica's utter shock, he didn't shoo the cat. He tentatively scratched Gatsby behind the ears. Gatsby leaned into the touch, purring like a chainsaw. "He's soft," Desmond murmured, his golden eyes meeting Erica's. There was no aggression in them now, only a quiet, shy curiosity. "Most things are, Desmond," Erica said softly. "If you stop trying to crush them." The moment was interrupted by the sudden, sharp scent of adrenaline. Elias appeared at the end of the hall, his face grim. "Desmond, we have a problem at the north perimeter. Rogues." The soft man disappeared. In an instant, the Alpha King was back. He stood tall, his golden eyes flashing with a cold, lethal light. "Maya, go to your room. Lock the door. Erica, stay here." "I'm not," Erica started, but Desmond was already moving, his black cane clicking with a new, urgent rhythm as he headed toward the security hub. Chapter 5. The rogue alert had been a false alarm. A group of overeager teenagers from a neighboring pack trespassing on the northern cliffs. But the tension it left behind was a physical presence in the room. 2 days later, Erica returned to the Erie, her mint green Fiat rattling with a new, rhythmic clinking sound as she pulled up the drive. She had swapped her muslin mock-ups for a heavy leather case filled with high-end fabric swatches. Desmond was waiting in the library, a room dominated by glass walls and soaring shelves of first editions. The gas fireplace remained cold, the black ceramic logs sitting in a silent row. He was leaning against a mahogany desk, his black cane hooked over the edge, fiddling with his gold signet ring. "I've narrowed down the selections for the primary three-piece," Erica announced, spreading a dozen swatches across the desk. "We need something with a high twist count. You tend to explode out of things when you're stressed, so the fabric needs a memory." Desmond looked at the squares of cloth as if they were ancient runes he couldn't decipher. "They all look blue, Erica." "This is midnight navy, this is charcoal indigo, and this is deep cobalt," she countered, pointing to each with her silver tape measure. "There is a significant difference in the undertones. Look at the way the cobalt catches the light through the windows. It matches your eyes when you're annoyed." "I am currently annoyed," he rumbled, though a faint, shy quirk touched the corner of his mouth. "And they still look blue." Erica sighed, a puff of breath that smelled of the spiced pear lozenge she'd been sucking on. She moved closer, invading his space to hold a swatch of heavy, midnight wool against his arm. The contrast against his tanned skin was striking. As she adjusted the fabric, she noticed him wince, his weight shifting abruptly toward his right leg. The gold in his eyes flared with a flash of pain. "Sit down, Desmond," she commanded, her voice softening. "I'm fine. The weather is turning," he replied, his voice a gravelly rasp. "The pressure in the air is dropping." "I wasn't asking. Sit." She pointed to a leather armchair. He obeyed, the movement stiff and labored. He lowered himself into the chair, his left hip clearly locking up. Erica knelt at his side, her nimble fingers moving over the lines of his current, baggy trousers. "I'm going to change the cut of the rise and add an invisible gusset in the crotch and inner thigh. It will take the pressure off your hip when you sit and give you a full range of motion if you have to move quickly. You've been wearing suits that fight your body. I'm going to make one that works with it." Desmond looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "No one has ever cared about the why behind my clothes, Erica. They just want me to look like a king." "A king who can't walk comfortably isn't a king. He's a target," she snapped, though her touch remained gentle as she pinned a note to her chart. She looked up, catching him staring at her with an intensity that made her pulse flutter. He cleared his throat, looking away. "If you are finished poking at me, stay for dinner. We need to discuss the final bill." "I already sent the invoice to Elias," Erica said, her eyebrow arching near her small scar. "Then stay, because the chef made a spiced pear tart, and Maya is complaining that the house is too quiet," he admitted, his voice dropping to a shy rumble. "And I would like the company." Erica felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the climate control. "Fine. But if I stay, you have to let me pick the deep cobalt. You're colorblind to nuance, and I refuse to let my brand be represented by just blue." Chapter 6. Dinner had been surprisingly peaceful until the front gates hummed with a frantic, unauthorized signal. They were in the formal dining room, the remains of the pear tart on delicate china plates. Gatsby was sprawled across a velvet rug, purring as Maya snuck him a piece of high-quality ham. The security intercom crackled. "Alpha, we have a situation at the gate. A man is demanding entry. He says he's looking for Erica Hart, claims he can smell her from the road." Erica's fork clattered against her plate. That scent. She could feel it now. A sour, cloying smell of cheap musk and arrogance. Gavin. "Erica?" Desmond's voice was a low warning. He stood up, his hand immediately finding the silver handle of his cane. The golden light in his eyes turned into a predatory simmer. "It's my ex-boyfriend," Erica said, her voice tight with a mix of fury and embarrassment. "Gavin. He's an alpha from my old pack. He doesn't know the meaning of the word no or restraining order." "Elias," Desmond rumbled into the air, his voice amplified by the house's smart system. "Open the gate. Bring him to the foyer. I want to see this younger man Miss Hart was so fond of." "Desmond, no!" Erica said, standing up. "This is my mess. He's a bully, and he's looking for a reaction. Don't go alpha king on him. It's what he wants." "I am not going to play games, Erica," Desmond said, his jaw set like a trap. "He is on my land, disrespecting my guest." They met Gavin in the foyer. He was 24, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was wearing an expensive, trendy leather jacket that cost more than Erica's car, but he wore it with an air of unearned superiority. "Erica, baby," Gavin smirked, ignoring the massive, scarred man standing behind her. "I've been looking everywhere for you. You can't just block me and run off to the mountains. You're an Omega. You need a real alpha to look after you, not some relic." Gavin's eyes flickered to Desmond, taking in the graying temples and the cane. He let out a sharp, mocking bark of laughter. "This is your new client? What's the matter? Did the retirement home need a new uniform?" Erica stepped forward before Desmond could move. She stood between the two men, her petite frame radiating a cold, sharp authority. "Gavin, you have 30 seconds to leave, before I call the police and your current alpha," she said, her voice steady. "You cheated. You lied. You are a footnote in my life that I've already edited out. And if you ever speak about my client's age again, I'll make sure the only thing you're wearing for the next year is a hospital gown." Gavin's smile faltered. He stepped toward her, his hand reaching out to grab her arm. "Listen here, you little." A hand like a steel vice clamped onto Gavin's wrist. Desmond didn't even look like he was trying. He stood there, 6 feet 5 inches of sheer, silent menace, his golden eyes glowing with a terrifying, ancient light. "She told you to leave," Desmond rumbled. The sound was so deep it made the glass panels in the door vibrate. "I suggest you listen, because unlike her, I am not polite." Desmond didn't roar. He didn't shift. He simply squeezed. The sound of Gavin's wrist bones groaning was audible in the silent foyer. Gavin let out a whimpering yelp, his face turning pale. "Get out." Desmond released him. Gavin stumbled back, tripping over his own feet, and scrambled toward his flashy sports car. He peeled out of the driveway, leaving a trail of scorched rubber. Desmond turned to Erica, his expression softening instantly. "Are you all right?" "I told you I could handle him," she said, though her hands were shaking. "I know you could," Desmond replied, his voice a gentle hum. "But you shouldn't have to." Chapter 7. 3 nights later, the city was draped in a thick silver fog. Erica was in her studio, heart and thread, working late under the glow of a vintage task lamp. The scent of spiced pear was thick in the air as she painstakingly hand-stitched the inner lining of Desmond's cobalt jacket. A heavy knock at the door made her jump, her steel shears nearly slipping from her hand. She opened the door to find Desmond. He wasn't in a suit. He was wearing a dark, heavy coat and a charcoal sweater. He looked tired. "The Erie has a security breach," he said by way of greeting. "Elias is sweeping the perimeter. I decided to personally check on my most valuable asset." "I'm a tailor, Desmond, not a diamond," Erica teased, though she stepped aside to let him in. He walked through her studio, his large frame making the space feel suddenly tiny. He stopped at her drafting table, looking at the sketches pinned there. Not just suits, but dresses, coats, and intricate embroidery. "You're very talented, Erica," he said, his voice quiet. "This studio, it's a sanctuary." "It's a fortress," she corrected, leaning against the table. "I'm saving everything I make from your commission to buy back my parents' pack house. The bank took it after the Great Shift. I want it back. I want equity, something that belongs to me." Desmond looked at her, his golden eyes reflecting the lamplight. "I understand. I spent 20 years building an empire so no one could ever take anything from Maya again. But sometimes, in the building, you forget how to actually live in the house." He moved to her small seating area. He saw the remote on the side table and pressed the button. The gas fireplace clicked, the blue flames dancing instantly over the ceramic logs. He watched the fire for a moment. "I feel like a ghost sometimes," he admitted, a rare moment of candor. "The world moves so fast. Touchscreens, slang, younger men with leather jackets. I'm a wolf from a different era, Erica. I'm a relic." "You're not a relic," Erica said, moving toward him. She sat on the edge of the chair opposite him. "You're a classic. There's a difference. Classics have soul. Classics have stories. Those younger men are just fast fashion. They fall apart after one season." Desmond looked at her, a faint, shy smile touching his lips. "You always have a punchline, don't you?" "It keeps the shadows away," she whispered. "I'm lonely, Erica," he said, the honesty hitting her like a punch to the gut. "Maya is growing up. The pack is a machine. And then you walked into my closet and told me I was dusty." Erica laughed, a soft, musical sound. "Well, you were, but a bit of polish goes a long way." He reached out, his large hand hesitating before covering hers on the armrest. His skin was hot, his touch heavy and grounding. For a long moment, they just sat there in the silence of the studio, the only sound the faint hum of the gas fire. "I should go," he said, though he didn't move. "Elias will be wondering if I've been kidnapped." "Stay for 10 more minutes," Erica said. "The fog is too thick to drive in anyway." Chapter 8. "You want me to do what?" Desmond stared at the neon-lit sign of the iron hatchet. "It's called axe throwing, Desmond. It's what the kids are doing these days." Erica grinned, hopping out of her Fiat. "You said you wanted to feel less like a ghost. Nothing makes you feel more alive than throwing sharp objects at a wall." They were in a curated, fictional district of the city called the Foundry. It was a Friday night, and the bar was packed with humans and shifters alike. Desmond looked wildly out of place in his expensive charcoal sweater, his black cane held tightly in his hand. "I am a king, Erica. I do not throw hatchets for sport. I have people who do that for me." "Oh, hush, it's a bet," she said, leading him toward a private lane. "If I win, you have to eat a chili dog from the vendor outside, with extra onions." "And if I win?" Desmond asked, his eyes narrowing as he took a hatchet from the rack. "Then I'll wear whatever ridiculous formal thing you want for the pack summit." Desmond weighed the axe in his hand. He didn't use his cane, he leaned against the wooden partition. He took a breath, his swimmer's shoulders broadening. He threw. The axe didn't hit the target. It hit the backboard with such force that the wood splintered, the blade burying itself 3 inches deep into the structural support beam. The entire lane shuddered. The room went silent. The hipster attendant stared with his mouth open. "I believe I broke it," Desmond said, sounding genuinely apologetic. "You didn't throw it. You launched it like a missile." Erica laughed, clutching her stomach. Technique, Desmond. It's about the flick of the wrist, not raw alpha muscle. She stepped up, her athletic frame poised. With a graceful, practiced motion, she tossed her hatchet. It spun perfectly through the air and thudded right into the bullseye. See? Precision, she winked. They spent the next hour laughing, actually laughing. Desmond tried to hold back his strength, his face scrunched in concentration as he tried to mimic her flick. He looked like a giant trying to play a toy piano. When he finally hit the outer ring of the target, he let out a triumphant shout that turned several heads. "You're a terrible influence, Hart," he said as they walked out into the cool night air. "I'm a delight, and you know it." They reached the parking lot. The fog had cleared, leaving the stars bright above them. Desmond stopped by her Fiat, his expression turning serious. He looked at her, his golden eyes searching hers. "Thank you, Erica. For tonight. For everything." He leaned in, his scent of cedar and clove enveloping her. He was so close she could see the silver at his temples. He tilted his head, his hand reaching out to brush a stray hair from her forehead, near her scar. Just as his lips were about to touch hers, his phone let out a harsh, jarring ring. It was the emergency pack frequency. Desmond pulled back, a curse under his breath. He answered it, his face turning to stone. "Valco here." "What?" "Where?" "I'm 10 minutes away." He hung up and looked at Erica, the ghost gone, replaced by the king. "There's a massive breach at the southern border. This wasn't a false alarm. It's a coordinated raid." "Go," Erica said, her humor vanishing. "I'll get home." "No, you're coming with me," he said, grabbing her arm. "The studio isn't safe if they're targeting my connections. We're going back to the Erie. Now." Chapter 9. The drive back to the Erie was a grim contrast to the light-hearted energy of the axe-throwing bar. Desmond pushed the Mustang to its limits, the roar of the 429 engine drowning out the whistle of the wind. Erica sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her silver tape measure clutched in her hand like a rosary. When they skidded to a halt in the driveway, the smell of burnt rubber and heated metal filled the air. Inside the security hub, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of sour adrenaline. Elias was bark-ordering sentries over a headset, his brow furrowed as he tracked red dots on a digital map of the southern border. "Status," Desmond rumbled, his voice losing every trace of the shy man who had struggled with a hatchet only an hour before. He leaned his black cane against the console, his golden eyes scanning the monitors. "They hit the southern gate with a coordinated explosive charge," Elias reported, his jaw tight. "It wasn't just a skirmish. They knew exactly where the camera blind spots were. We've pushed them back into the tree line, but they're lingering. This was a message, Des." Desmond's jaw tightened, the jagged claw scar on his shoulder rippling under his sweater. He turned to Erica, his expression hardening into a mask of cold authority. "Elias, get a car ready. I want Erica escorted back to her studio. She needs to pack her essential tools and move to a safe house in the neutral zone." "Wait, what?" Erica stepped forward, her athletic frame tensed. "I'm not finished with the deep cobalt suit. I have 3 fittings left, including the structural reinforcement for your hip. I'm not running away to a safe house." "The situation has changed, Erica," Desmond said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low frequency. "You've been seen with me. Gavin knows you're here, and if he's talking to the rogue factions, which he likely is, you are a target. I am firing you for your own safety." "You can't fire me!" Erica's voice rose, a sharp, polite but firm edge to it. "We have a signed contract with an accountability clause. You don't get to decide my level of risk because you're feeling protective and ancient." I'm a master tailor, and I don't leave a project half-finished because of some barking wolves at the gate. Desmond loomed over her, his golden eyes flashing with a predatory light. This isn't a business disagreement. People are dying at my border. I cannot protect my pack and watch over a stubborn tailor at the same time. Then don't watch over me, Erica countered, her small scar on her eyebrow twitching. Assign a guard to my workroom. Let me finish the job I started. You need that suit for the summit to show the other alphas you aren't dusty or weak. If you go there in that charcoal monstrosity from 2010, you've already lost. Elias smothered a snort of laughter, quickly turning it into a cough as Desmond glared at him. The Alpha King looked back at Erica, his chest heaving. The logic was sound, even if his instincts screamed to hide her away. Fine, Desmond growled, the sound vibrating through the floorboards. You stay. But you don't leave the Eyrie. You move your equipment here tonight. You will work in the guest wing under 24-hour guard. If you so much as step onto the balcony without an escort, I will personally carry you to the safe house. Do we have a deal? Erica smoothed her messy bun, her fingers brushing the pencil still tucked behind her ear. Deal. But I'm bringing Gatsby. I'm not leaving him in the city while robes are sniffing around. Chapter 10. Moving into the Eyrie felt less like a professional arrangement and more like a tactical occupation. By 3 a.m., Erica's drafting table, her vintage task lamp, and her rolls of deep cobalt wool were installed in a spacious sunroom overlooking the cliffside. Gatsby had already made his presence known by claiming Desmond's favorite leather armchair in the library, leaving a few defiant scratch marks on the expensive hide. The following morning, the sun rose over Lunaris Bay in a pale, watery gray. Erica was at her table, her silver tape measure draped around her neck, when a soft knock sounded on the door. It was Maya. The teenager looked tired, her stormy gray eyes rimmed with red. She was clutching a sketchbook to her chest, her oversized black hoodie pulled low. He won't let me leave the house, Maya muttered, slouching against the doorframe. Not even for art class. He's gone full Alpha King, and it sucks. Erica looked up from a sleeve pattern she was cutting with her steel shears. He's scared, Maya. When people love something they can't control, they try to lock it in a box. It's a flawed logic, but it comes from a good place. Maya walked over, watching as Erica meticulously pinned the lining. Is that the suit for the summit? It's actually cool. Usually his clothes look like they belong in a museum for boring people. It's deep cobalt, Erica said, offering a small smile. It's going to make him look like a man who can handle a rogue uprising and a board meeting at the same time. Since you're stuck here, why don't you help me? I need someone with an eye for color to help me pick the silk for the pocket square. The two spent the morning in a comfortable domestic silence. Erica taught Maya how to identify the grain of the fabric, while Maya shared sketches of the gardens. It was a glimpse into a life Erica hadn't realized she was missing. A family dynamic that felt grounded and real. Breakfast was brought in by a silent sentry. Thick steaks, eggs, and strong coffee. Erica remembered the lore. Shifters needed massive calorie intake when their adrenaline was spiked. She ate her eggs while watching Desmond through the glass walls of the courtyard. He was training with his men, his black cane set aside. Even with his stiff hip, he moved with a brutal, efficient grace. He looked up and caught her eye through the glass. He didn't smile, but he paused, his hand going to his gold signet ring. He looked at her for a long beat, his expression a mix of relief and longing, before turning back to his beta. He's totally into you, you know, Maya said, not looking up from her sketchbook. He hasn't looked at anyone like that since my mom. It's kind of gross, but also kind of sweet. Erica felt the heat rise to her cheeks, the scent of spiced pear in the room suddenly feeling a bit more vibrant. We have a professional contract, Maya, that's all. Right, Maya rolled her eyes. And Gatsby is just a regular house cat. Chapter 11. The tension in the house reached a boiling point on the 5th evening of Erica's stay. The rogue activity had quieted, but the silence felt like a coiled spring. Erica called Desmond to the sunroom for the final structural fitting. The suit was nearly finished. The invisible gusset was in place, and the deep cobalt wool felt like liquid armor. "I need you to take off the shirt," Erica said, her voice steady despite the way her heart was thumping against her ribs. "I need to check the drape of the waistcoat against her bare skin to ensure the internal holsters don't pull the fabric." Desmond didn't argue. He pulled the charcoal sweater over his head, revealing the vast, scarred landscape of his chest and shoulders. The light from the vintage task lamp cast deep shadows across his swimmer's build. Erica stepped close, her silver tape measure in hand. As she moved to adjust the shoulder of the waistcoat, her fingers brushed the jagged claw scar that ran toward his pectoral. Desmond flinched, a low, pained rumble in his chest. "It's ugly," he muttered, his golden eyes fixed on a point on the wall. "A reminder of a time I wasn't fast enough to protect what mattered." "It's not ugly," Erica whispered. She didn't think. She simply followed her heart. She leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to the edge of the scar, her spiced pear scent mingling with his cedar and clove. "It's a map of your survival, Desmond. There's no shame in surviving." Desmond let out a ragged breath. The black cane he'd been leaning on clattered to the floor as he turned, his large hands reaching out to cup her face. His skin was scorching, his touch surprisingly gentle as his thumbs brushed her cheekbones near the small scar on her eyebrow. "Erica," he groaned, his voice a raw, broken thing. "I've spent 10 years convincing myself I was too old, too hard, too finished for a light like yours. But every time you look at me, I feel like the world is starting all over again." The air in the sunroom seemed to vanish. The golden light in his eyes was no longer predatory. It was worshipful. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. "I prefer younger men, remember?" Erica teased, though her voice was trembling. Desmond bared his teeth in a dark, heated grin, his grip tightening just enough to pull her flush against his bare chest. "I'm going to make you forget every younger man you've ever met." He backed her against the drafting table, the silver tape measure tangled between their bodies. His eyes glowed a deep, molten gold, the alpha within him rising to the surface, not in anger, but in acclaim. "Desmond, don't talk," he growled, the sound vibrating through her chest. "Just look at me." Chapter 12. The kiss was a collision of 10 years of loneliness and 3 weeks of mounting tension. It tasted of spiced pear and cloves, a frantic, hungry exchange that left Erica's head spinning. Desmond's hands moved over her athletic frame with a desperate reverence, as if he were trying to memorize her through his fingertips. He pulled back just an inch, his breathing heavy, his golden eyes searching hers. "I'm an old wolf, Erica. I don't know how to do casual. If I take this, if I take you, I'm never letting go." "I don't do casual either," Erica panted, her hands clutching his bare shoulders. "I want accountability, Desmond. I want the real thing." A sudden, loud crash from the hallway broke the moment. They sprang apart as Elias burst into the room, his face flushed. "Des, sorry, We've got a problem. The Southern Pack Council is on the line. They've heard about the raid and they're demanding an emergency session. And they've heard rumors about the tailor. Desmond's face transformed instantly, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the mask of the king. He grabbed his sweater from the chair and pulled it on. How did they hear? Gavin. Elias spat the name like a curse. He's been running his mouth at the neutral bars, telling anyone who will listen that the Alpha King is being managed by a human-centric Omega. He's painting you as weak, Des, controlled by your loins instead of your pack. Desmond gripped his signet ring, twisting it violently. He's trying to provoke a challenge. Erica felt a chill run through her. He's trying to use me to get to you. He knows you're protective. I'll handle the council, Desmond said, his voice cold as ice. He turned to Erica, his gaze lingering on her swollen lips for a fraction of a second. Elias, I want double guards on this wing. Maya stays with Erica. No one enters or leaves without my personal code. Desmond strode toward the door, his black cane clicking rhythmically against the floor. At the doorway, he paused, looking back at her. Erica, he called out. Yes? The suit. Finish it. I'm going to need it sooner than I thought. As he disappeared down the hall, Erica sank into her work chair, the scent of cedar and clove still clinging to her skin. She looked at the deep cobalt fabric on her table. This wasn't just a commission anymore. This was a declaration of war. Maya walked in a few minutes later, holding Gatsby. She looked at Erica's flushed face and the discarded cane on the floor. So, Maya said, her voice dripping with teenage sarcasm, how was the fitting? Shut up, Maya, Erica grumbled, but she couldn't hide the small, secret smile as she picked up her needle. Chapter 13. The heavy silence of the guest wing was shattered at dawn, not by an explosion, but by the jagged electronic chime of Erica's tablet. She had fallen asleep at her drafting table, her head resting on a roll of silk lining. Beside her, Gatsby was curled into a ball of white fluff, snoring with a dog-like rhythm. Erica blinked her eyes open, her small eyebrow scar twitching as she swiped the screen. It was a security alert from Heart and Thread. Her breath hitched. The remote feed showed her sanctuary in the city, the place she had poured every cent of her savings into, in utter ruins. No, she whispered, her voice cracking. The heavy glass storefront had been smashed inward. Her vintage task lamp, the twin to the one she had brought to the estate, lay twisted on the floor. But the cruelty didn't stop there. Rolls of Italian wool had been shredded, and her primary cutting table had been doused in black industrial oil. On the back wall, someone had spray-painted a single, mocking word. Loin-guard. The door to the sunroom burst open. Desmond strode in, his face a thundercloud of repressed fury. He was still wearing the charcoal sweater from the night before, though it was rumpled. He didn't have his cane. He moved with a pronounced, painful limp, his left hand gripping the back of a chair for support. Erica, I just got the report, he rumbled, his golden eyes fixed on the tablet in her trembling hands. They destroyed it, Desmond, Erica said, her voice rising in a mix of grief and fury. They didn't just rob it. They targeted the craft. They targeted my accountability. That oil, that was meant to be a message about me being a slick distraction for you. Desmond reached her in 2 uneven strides, his scent of cedar and scorched clove enveloping her. He took the tablet from her and set it face down on the table. This was Gavin's work. He didn't do the physical damage. He's too cowardly for that. But he paid the rogues to do it. It's a warning, Erica. They are trying to strip away everything you built, so you have nowhere to go but to me. They want to prove you're a liability. I am not a liability, Erica snapped, her athletic frame tensing as she stood up. I am a master tailor who just lost her livelihood because she dared to work for an alpha king who can't keep his borders secure. Desmond flinched as if she had struck him. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. He looked at the floor, his jaw tight. You're right. I failed in my first duty. I promised you safety, and I provided a target. He looked back up, the gold in his eyes burning with a raw, agonizing guilt. I will rebuild it. Every brick, every spool of thread. I'll buy the finest wool in Europe. I don't want you to buy it, Desmond. Erica cut him off, her silver tape measure swinging as she paced the small space. I wanted to buy it. I wanted the equity. If you buy it, it's just another golden cage, don't you see? That's exactly what the council wants to say, that I'm just a kept woman. Then we prove them wrong, Desmond said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal hum. We don't hide. The Pack Gala is tonight. You have less than 12 hours to finish the deep cobalt suit. You will wear the dress you've been secretly sewing. We walk into that ballroom together. We don't defend our position. We occupy it. Erica looked at the shredded shop on the screen, then at the man in front of her. He looked older than he had the night before, the silver at his temples appearing more prominent in the harsh morning light. But there was a steel in him that hadn't been there before. Fine, she said, wiping a stray tear with the back of her hand. But I'm billing you for the overtime. And Desmond? Yes? Pick up your cane. You look like you're about to fall over, and I need you standing tall when I fit the trousers. Chapter 14. The evening of the Iron Ridge Pack Gala arrived with a chilling wind that rattled the glass walls of the Eyrie. Inside, the estate had been transformed into a theater of power. The sharp metallic tang of ionized air from the high-tech security sweepers outside buzzed with a low electric hum. In the guest wing, Erica stood before a full-length mirror. She had spent the last 24 hours in a fever of creation, working while Gatsby watched from the safety of his reinforced carrier, which she had moved into the secure inner closet. Her dress was a masterpiece of structural silk in a deep burnt orange, a color that complemented her spiced pear scent and the warmth of her amber undertones. It featured a high architectural collar and a skirt that allowed for a full range of motion. Tucked into the hidden pocket of her skirt were her steel shears. She felt like a warrior in silk. A knock sounded. Desmond entered. Erica felt her breath hitch. The deep cobalt suit was finally on him, and the transformation was total. The midnight blue wool clung to his swimmer's shoulders with terrifying precision. The invisible gusset worked perfectly. Even as he walked toward her, favoring his hips slightly, the lines of the trousers remained crisp and elegant. He looked like a king who had stepped out of a legend and into a boardroom. You look... Erica searched for the word, her silver tape measure still wrapped around her wrist. Exorbitant, Desmond. Absolutely obscenely expensive. Desmond looked at himself in the mirror, his fingers brushing the gold signet ring. He looked younger, the suit stripping away the dusty layers of his past. I feel like I can breathe, Erica. For the first time in a decade, I don't feel like I'm wearing a costume of my own father. That's the power of a good fit, she whispered, stepping closer to adjust his lapel. No, he rumbled, taking her hands in his. That's the power of a woman who refuses to let me hide. They arrived at the grand ballroom in the city center via the Black Mustang. As the valet took the keys, the flashbulbs of the pack photographers went off like a barrage of gunfire. The Cinderella moment was not soft. It was an act of defiance. As they walked through the double doors, the room fell silent. The younger wolves, who had spent the week whispering about the old king and his Omega distraction, stared with their mouths open. Desmond didn't lean on his cane tonight. He walked with Erica on his arm, his golden eyes scanning the room with a cold, territorial heat. Gavin was there, standing near the bar with a group of council sycophants. He was wearing a flashy, neon-bright suit that looked cheap and flimsy next to Desmond's cobalt masterpiece. When his eyes met Erica's, his smirk vanished. He looked at the way the Alpha King's hand rested protectively on the small of her back, and his face turned a mottled, jealous purple. "Let them stare," Desmond whispered near her ear, his breath smelling of the clove-scented mint he'd taken earlier. "They're looking at the future of this pack, and they're terrified." Chapter 15. The orchestra began a slow, sweeping waltz. It was a traditional piece, one that favored the older generation, but the rhythm was driving and modern. "I believe the tailor owes the client a formal rehearsal before the actual summit," Desmond said, his voice a low rumble that Erica felt in her marrow. He stepped into her space, his large hand finding her waist. "I'm a terrible dancer, Desmond. I'll step on your expensive shoes." "Then I'll lead," he countered, pulling her flush against him. They moved onto the floor. The proximity was intoxicating. Erica's face was level with his cobalt-clad chest. She could hear the steady, powerful thrum of his heart. As they spun, the deep orange of her dress blurred with the midnight blue of his suit. "Not bad for an old man," Erica whispered, looking up into his golden eyes. Desmond's grip tightened slightly, his thumb brushing the silk of her dress. "I have endurance, Erica. Younger men are all sprint and no finish. I've learned how to pace myself." The chemistry between them was palpable, a physical weight that seemed to push back the prying eyes of the crowd. For a few minutes, the sabotage, the council, and the rogues didn't exist. There was only the scent of cedar and spiced pear, and the perfect, synchronized movement of two people who had finally found their rhythm. "You're staring," Desmond teased, his voice shy despite his imposing presence. "I'm admiring my handiwork," Erica replied. "The suit is perfect." "The suit is just wool, Erica. It's the woman holding the shears that matters." As the song reached its crescendo, the lights in the ballroom flickered. Once, twice. Then, the massive crystal chandeliers overhead died with a sickening electrical pop. The room plunged into total darkness. A split second later, a massive explosion rocked the building. The sound was like a punch to the stomach, a concussive blast that shattered the high windows along the eastern wall. Shards of glass rained down like diamonds of death. "Maya!" Desmond roared, his voice shifting into a terrifying alpha howl that echoed through the blackened hall. Erica felt his hands rip away from her. The psychic link of the bond, though not yet sealed by a bite, pulsed with a sudden, agonizing spike of his fear and protective rage. "Erica, stay down," he commanded, his voice already moving away from her. The darkness was filled with the sounds of screaming, the cracking of furniture, and the unmistakable, popcorn-like sound of bones breaking. The rogues weren't at the border anymore. They were inside. Chapter 16. Erica didn't stay down. She couldn't. She scrambled toward the pillar where Maya had been sitting with Elias. The air was thick with dust and the sour, metallic scent of blood. Through the jagged holes where the windows had been, the moonlight spilled in, casting long, haunting shadows across the ruined ballroom. She saw Desmond first. He had shifted. A massive, midnight black wolf was tearing through a line of attackers near the buffet tables. He was a whirlwind of fur and teeth, but he was struggling. His left hind leg, the one corresponding to his hip injury, buckled slightly as he pivoted to face 3 rogues at once. "Desmond!" Erica screamed. She saw the expensive deep cobalt jacket he had been wearing lying in shredded, bloody tatters on the floor. Her heart twisted. "I spent 40 hours on that jacket!" she yelled at the nearest rogue, a feral-looking man with a serrated knife. She didn't have a wolf's strength yet, but she had her tools. She reached into her hidden pocket and pulled out her heavy, cold steel shears. The rogue lunged. Erica dropped low, her athletic frame moving with the precision of a needle through silk. She swung the heavy shears, the blunt end connecting with the man's temple with a sickening thud. He went down like a stone. "Erica, behind you!" It was Maya's voice. Erica turned to see 2 rogues closing in on the teenager, who was backed against a decorative fountain. The fountain was a modern piece, a tall column of black marble that had been cracked by the blast. Water was spraying everywhere, turning the floor into a slick, dangerous mess. Desmond saw it too. He let out a roar of pure agony, trying to reach his daughter, but the 3 rogues pinned him down, their teeth sinking into his shoulders and flanks. "No!" Erica cried. She looked at Maya, then at the rogues, then at the massive Alpha King being torn apart to save his family. The latent power in her blood, the Omega spark she had ignored for years, suddenly flared into a white-hot sun. She didn't think about the pain. She didn't think about the mass conservation or the sound of her own bones breaking like dry wood. She dropped the shears. The sound of popcorn popping echoed in her ears as she felt her body stretch and contort. Her spiked pear scent intensified, turning into a weapon. "Maya, move!" She tried to scream, but it came out as a sharp, honey-colored growl. Erica shifted. Chapter 17. The transition was an agonizing symphony of structural failure. Erica's burnt orange dress, the silk she had painstakingly stitched with reinforced seams, offered a final, defiant resistance before shredding into useless ribbons. The sound, that dry, staccato popping of bones and the wet slide of muscle, was a punch to the stomach, a visceral reminder that she was no longer just a tailor in a studio. She was a wolf. She emerged into the darkness of the ballroom as a sleek, honey-colored predator. Her spiced pear scent had sharpened, becoming a headier, more concentrated fragrance of wild fruit and amber. Her vision shifted into a high-contrast world of grays and silvers. She felt the slickness of the water from the cracked black marble fountain beneath her paws, the floor now a dangerous ice rink of spray and debris. Desmond was a black hurricane of fury just a few yards away, but his movements were heavy. The 3 rogues, scrawny, desperate-looking wolves with mangy fur, were taking advantage of his stiff left hind leg. Every time the Alpha King pivoted, his hip locked, forcing him to overcompensate with his upper body. He was bleeding from a deep gash on his shoulder, where the deep cobalt wool had once offered a meager barrier. One rogue, a scarred gray wolf, broke away from the main cluster and lunged toward Maya. The teenager was backed against the leaking fountain, her eyes wide with terror. Erica didn't hesitate. She wasn't built for raw power like Desmond, but she was fast, athletic and petite even in her shifted form. She launched herself across the slick floor, her claws skidding on the marble before finding traction. She intercepted the gray rogue mid-air. It wasn't a graceful combat move. It was a desperate tackle. She slammed into the intruder's flank, the impact knocking the wind out of her. Her teeth found the thick fur of the rogue's neck, and she clamped down with every ounce of her latent Omega strength. The intruder let out a high-pitched yelp of surprise, tumbling away from Maya and into the spray of the fountain. Desmond heard the yelp. He turned, his golden wolf eyes flaring with a terrifying brilliance when he saw the honey-colored wolf standing guard over his daughter. A low, thunderous rumble shook his chest, a sound of pride and savage relief. The remaining 2 rogues saw the tide turning. With the Alpha King's attention back on them and a new, feisty defender at his side, they began to weave through the ruined furniture toward the shattered windows. Desmond didn't let them go. He lunged, his massive jaws snapping shut on the trailing leg of the larger rogue, dragging him back into the center of the debris. Erica stood her ground in front of Maya. She could smell the fear coming off the girl, sour and sharp. But she also smelled the copper of Desmond's blood. Her wolf brain was a cacophony of instincts, but the tailor in her remained. She was looking for the holes, the weak seams, the places where the enemy could be unraveled. She snarled, a low, honey-colored warning. She wasn't just a distraction anymore. She was the backup. Chapter 18. The fight reached its frantic crescendo near the eastern wall. The rogue Erica had tackled scrambled up, his eyes bloodshot and crazed. He didn't go back for Maya. He went for the honey-colored wolf who had humiliated him. He was twice her mass, a brutal scavenger who didn't care about a fair fit. He charged, using the slick floor to his advantage. Erica tried to pivot, but a discarded shard of a crystal chandelier caught the pad of her front paw, making her stumble. The gray rogue slammed into her side. The force was exorbitant. Erica was sent flying backward, her small frame crashing against the jagged edge of the black marble fountain. The sound was sickening. A sharp crack, followed by a whimper that broke the ballroom's heavy silence. Erica slid to the floor, her honey-colored fur matted with the fountain spray and her own blood. Her side burned with a fire that felt like a hot iron. 2 of her ribs had snapped upon impact with the marble. The world began to tilt, the gray and silver vision blurring into a dark, hazy smudge. Desmond's roar was no longer a growl. It was a mourning cry. The distraction cost him. One of the rogues he was pinning managed to rake a claw across his injured hip, deepening the old war wound. Desmond didn't seem to feel it. He dispatched the rogue with a single, lethal snap of his neck and turned toward the gray wolf looming over Erica. The gray rogue never stood a chance. Desmond didn't just fight him. He obliterated him. It was a display of alpha dominance that was obscenely violent and terrifyingly fast. When the last of the intruders had fled through the shattered windows or lay silent among the debris, the ballroom fell into a haunting, echoing quiet. Desmond shifted back first. The sound of his bones resetting was a jagged, painful echo in the darkness. He was naked, his swimmer's build covered in dust, blood, and the shredded tatters of the deep cobalt suit. He ignored the stinging gashes on his flanks and his locked hip. "Erica," he rasped, his voice a broken thread. He reached her as she shifted back. It was a slow, agonizing process. Erica lay on the wet, slick floor, the remains of her orange dress barely covering her. She was deathly pale, her small eyebrow scar standing out like a white brand against her skin. Desmond reached for the remains of his deep cobalt jacket, the only piece of fabric that hadn't been completely shredded during his shift, and snatched it from the floor to wrap it around her. He gathered her into his arms, oblivious to the fact that his own blood was staining her skin. "Maya, call Elias. Tell him we need the medical team at the Erie. Now!" Erica looked up at him, her vision fading. She reached a trembling hand toward his face, her fingers brushing the golden stubble on his jaw. "I told you," she coughed, a metallic taste filling her mouth. "I told you I'd have your back." "Don't talk," Desmond choked out, a single tear tracking through the dust on his cheek. Just stay with me, Erica. That's an order. Her eyes fluttered shut as the darkness finally claimed her. Chapter 19. Erica woke to the rhythmic, comforting click of a mechanical watch. The air was warm and smelled of cedar, clove, and the sterile scent of medical grade A disinfectant. She didn't open her eyes immediately. She let her senses map her surroundings. She was in a bed, a very large, very soft bed. The sheets were high thread count Egyptian cotton, cool against her skin. She tried to take a deep breath, but a sharp, localized fire in her side stopped her. Don't try to move too quickly, a deep, gravelly voice rumbled. Erica opened her eyes. She was in Desmond's master suite at the Eyrie. The morning sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Desmond was sitting in a chair beside the bed. He looked terrible. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt and sweats, but he was pale, and he had a thick bandage wrapped around his shoulder. His black cane was leaning against his knee. He was holding a bowl of steaming broth. "How long?" Erica croaked. 2 days, Desmond said, his golden eyes filled with a raw, haunted exhaustion. You had 2 broken ribs and internal bruising. Omegas heal slower, but you're through the worst of it. You've been drifting in and out of a fever. He leaned forward, carefully spooning some of the broth toward her lips. Drink. You need the calories. Your metabolism is trying to knit those bones back together, and you're running on empty. Erica swallowed the broth. It was rich, savory, and filled with the protein her body was screaming for. After a few sips, some of the color returned to her cheeks. "Maya?" she asked. "She's fine. Scared, but fine. She's been sitting outside this door for 48 hours. I finally made her go take a nap." Desmond set the bowl down, his fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against the gold signet ring. He looked at her, and the guilt in his expression was a punch to the stomach. "I'm sending you away, Erica," he said, his voice a flat, dead thing. "As soon as you can stand, Elias will take you to the coastal house. The rogues targeted the gala specifically because of you. Because of us. I thought I could keep you in my world, but my world is a graveyard, and I won't let you be the next headstone." Erica stared at him, the spiced pear scent in the room turning sharp with indignation. "You're doing what?" "I'm resigning as your suitor," Desmond said, looking at the floor. "I'm too old for this, Erica. I'm too damaged. I thought I could be the man in that cobalt suit, but I'm just a wolf with a bad hip and a target on his back. I won't have your blood on my hands again." Chapter 20. The anger hit Erica like a bolt of lightning, overriding the pain in her ribs. She struggled to sit up, ignoring Desmond's frantic hands trying to push her back down. "You coward," she hissed, her voice gaining strength. Desmond froze, his golden eyes wide with shock. "Erica, I am trying to save your life." "No, you're trying to save your own conscience." Erica grabbed a silk pillow from behind her and threw it at his head. It didn't do much damage, but the gesture was clear. "You don't get to decide what's best for me, Desmond Valco. I'm not a piece of fabric you can just cut out of the pattern because it's a little difficult to sew." "The rogues nearly killed you!" he roared, standing up and leaning heavily on his cane. "If you had died because you were trying to protect me, I was protecting us!" she yelled back, wincing as her ribs protested. "I shifted because I wanted to. I fought because I'm a member of this pack now, whether your stupid council likes it or not. I chose this. I chose the risk, and I chose you." She leaned forward, her athletic frame trembling with the effort of staying upright. Her small eyebrow scar was flushed pink with her rage. "You think you're being noble? You're being an idiot. You're doing exactly what Gavin and the council want. They want to isolate you. They want to prove that you're a relic who can't hold on to anything he loves. Are you going to let them be right? Desmond stared at her, his chest heaving. The silence in the room was palpable, thick with the unsaid words and the raw, intoxicating tension that had been building since she first measured his neck. I was terrified, he whispered, his voice cracking. When I saw you hit that marble, when I heard your ribs break, I've never felt so old in my life, Erica. I've never felt so useless. Then stop being useless and start being accountable, Erica countered, her voice softening but remaining firm. You told me you didn't do casual. You told me you weren't letting go. Was that just another dusty alpha lie? Desmond let out a ragged, defeated sound. He dropped his cane and sat on the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, his voice muffled. I don't know how to be a king and a partner to someone as fierce as you. You start by staying, Erica said, reaching out to pull his hands away from his face. She forced him to look at her. You start by admitting that you're scared, and then you stay anyway. That's what a real alpha does, not the younger ones who run when things get messy. You. Desmond looked at her for a long, searching beat. Then, slowly, he leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. I'm an idiot, he murmured. Yes, you are. But you're my idiot. And you still owe me a chili dog. He laughed, a real, vibrant sound that filled the room. The mask of the king was gone, leaving only the man who was desperately, hopelessly in love. Chapter 21. The air in the master suite was thick, a heavy mixture of cedar, scorched clove, and the lingering sweetness of spiced pear. Erica lay against the silk-wrapped pillows, watching Desmond as he paced the length of the room. He had retrieved his black cane, the silver handle gleaming under the recessed ceiling lights, but he wasn't leaning on it for support. He was gripping it as if he might snap the wood. You're doing it again, Erica murmured, her voice still raspy but gaining its habitual sharp edge. You're overanalyzing the thread count of our future when the fabric is already on the loom. Desmond stopped, his golden eyes fixing on her with an intensity that made the small scar on her eyebrow prickle. He crossed the room, his limp slightly more pronounced than it had been an hour ago, and sat on the edge of the Egyptian cotton sheets. The mattress dipped under his weight. I have never been so terrified as I was when I saw you hit that black marble, he confessed, his hand reaching out to trace the line of her jaw. His skin was scorching. I am an alpha king. I am supposed to be the armor for my people. But with you, I feel like I'm the one being protected. Because you are, you big idiot, Erica whispered, reaching up to cover his hand with hers. Partnership isn't a one-way street with a toll booth. It's a shared map. The tension that had been building since she first wrapped a silver tape measure around his neck finally snapped. Desmond leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that tasted of desperate relief and intoxicating surrender. It wasn't the tentative exploration of the studio or the protective fury of the ballroom. It was an admission. He moved over her with a reverence that made her heart ache, his large hands careful of her bound ribs. Erica's breath hitched as his scent enveloped her, the amber and pear of her own essence rising to meet him. She didn't feel like a latent omega or a distraction anymore. She felt like the missing rib he had finally reclaimed. Mark me, she breathed against his throat, her fingers digging into his swimmer's shoulders. No more running, Desmond. No more too old. Mark me so the council knows exactly who I belong to and who belongs to me. Desmond let out a low, guttural growl that vibrated through her chest. He tilted her head back, his golden eyes blown wide until they were almost black. He found the junction of her neck and left shoulder, targeting the sensitive mating gland. The scent of her arousal, sweet and heady, drove his wolf to the surface as he claimed the spot she had measured with her tape weeks before. The bite was quick, a sharp spike of white-hot pain followed by a flood of euphoric warmth. As his teeth sank into the mating gland, a psychic floodgate burst open. Erica gasped as she felt the weight of his 10 years of loneliness, his fierce pride in Maya, and the overwhelming tidal wave of his love for her. It was a punch to the gut, but in the best way possible. Desmond pulled back, his lips stained with a tiny bead of her blood, his face transformed by a look of profound peace. The link was active. He could feel her stubbornness, her wit, and the fierce fire of her ambition to buy her parents' house. "Accountability," he whispered, resting his forehead against hers. "Accountability," she agreed, her hand sliding down from his shoulder to interlace with his, her thumb finding the cool gold of the signet ring on his left hand. They lay together in the quiet of the suite for hours, the psychic link humming like a well-tuned engine. But as the moon rose over the jagged cliffs of Lunar's Bay, the peace was fractured. A cold, sour ripple traveled through the bond, Desmond's intuition sensing a new threat. The council had arrived at the front gates. Chapter 22. Erica woke to the sound of Gatsby growling at the bedroom door. The 20-pound rag doll was standing guard, his tail puffed out like a bottle brush. He clearly sensed the hostile energy radiating from the foyer below. Beside her, the bed was empty, though the sheets still smelled of cedar and cloves. Erica sat up, wincing as her healing ribs gave a sharp reminder throb. She was wearing one of Desmond's oversized black t-shirts, the fabric soft against her skin. She focused on the newfound tether in her mind, the constant, low-level thrum of his presence. Desmond? A wave of stoic calm and protective heat washed back over her. "I'm in the Great Hall. The elders are demanding an audience. Stay in bed, Erica. Please." "Not a chance," Erica muttered to Gatsby. She stood up, her legs feeling a bit like jelly, but her resolve was reinforced steel. She couldn't shift, not with the ribs still knitting, but she could certainly dress the part of a Luna. She moved to the guest wing where her remaining supplies were kept. Most of her clothes had been at the ruined studio, but she had one power suit she'd been working on for herself. A sharp, structured blazer in a deep forest green with silver hardware. As she dressed, the reality of the situation downstairs pressed in. The Southern Council was a group of 7 elders who clung to the old ways like moss on a tombstone. To them, an Alpha King was a god, and an Omega was a vessel. A master tailor who talked back and drove a rattling mint-green Fiat was an anomaly they would seek to excise. She clipped her silver tape measure around her neck, her version of a royal sash, and checked her reflection. The scar on her eyebrow was pale, her eyes bright with a goal-getter's focus. She looked like a woman who was ready to audit the soul of the pack. She walked toward the great hall, her black flat silent on the stone floors. She stopped at the massive oak doors, listening. "Unprecedented negligence, Desmond," a reedy, arrogant voice was saying. "You allowed a human-centric Omega to distract you so thoroughly that your borders were breached, your gala was ruined, and your daughter was nearly taken. You are showing the signs of a king who has stayed on the throne too long. You are brittle." "I am not brittle, Harlan," Desmond's voice rumbled, though Erica could hear the strain in it, the way he was leaning on his cane, the way his hip was throbbing. I was targeted because I am the strongest threat to the rogue factions. My choice of mate is irrelevant to my capability." "Mate?" another voice scoffed. "You haven't marked her. She is a tailor, a worker. She is not of the blood." Erica pushed the doors open. The heavy wood groaned on its hinges. "Actually," Erica said, stepping into the cavernous room, her voice clear and polite. "The marking was finalized at approximately 3 a.m. If you'd like to check the psychic frequency, I suggest you do it quickly, before I decide your presence is an unauthorized breach of my home." Chapter 23. The great hall felt like a courtroom from a darker century. 7 elders sat in high-backed chairs of dark walnut, their scents a musty collection of old parchment and stagnant water. Desmond stood in the center of the floor, looking every bit the king in a simple black shirt that showed the bandages on his shoulder. He turned as Erica entered, his golden eyes flashing with a mix of pride and, "I told you to stay in bed." Erica ignored the look. She walked right up to the line of elders, her forest green blazer a sharp contrast to their drab, traditional robes. "Erica Hart," the head elder, Harlan, sneered. He was a thin man with eyes like a hawk and a mouth that looked like it had never tasted humor. "The woman who thinks a silver tape measure makes her an equal to an alpha king. Your lineage is a mess of low-ranking omegas and failed merchants. You bring nothing to the Iron Ridge Pack but a hobby." "A hobby?" Erica arched her eyebrow. "I run a business that has successfully outfitted 3 of the 5 alpha families in this territory with structural armor that has saved more lives than your outdated traditions ever have. I am a master tailor. I deal in the reality of what holds a man together when the world tries to rip him apart. What do you deal in, Harlan? Rereading the same laws while the rogues laugh at your lack of progress?" A gasp went through the room. Elias, standing in the shadows, looked like he was trying very hard not to cheer. "You are a distraction," Harlan barked, slamming his hand on the walnut table. "Desmond's hip is failing him. His mind is clouded by your amber and pear, and now our city studio is a ruin. You are a liability. We are here to suggest a transition of power to a younger, more stable alpha. Someone like Gavin, perhaps, who has shown great initiative in alerting us to your decline." "Gavin?" Desmond growled, the sound making the heavy chandeliers overhead tremble. He stepped forward, his cane clicking sharply against the stone. "Gavin is a parasite who orchestrated a raid on a civilian ballroom to settle a grudge. If you think he is the future of this pack, you are more dusty than I ever was." "The evidence is clear," Harlan countered, standing up. "You are too old to lead a pack in turmoil, and she is too low-born to support you. We will be taking a vote on your standing at the next moon." Erica felt the anger bubbling up, not as a whimper, but as a roar. She looked at Desmond, seeing the way the elder's words were hitting his secret motivation, his fear that he was too old, that he was a ghost. She stepped closer to the council table, reaching into her pocket. She didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a folded piece of heavy vellum, an itemized invoice. Chapter 24. "Before you vote on anything," Erica said, her voice dropping to a dangerous professional hum, "we need to discuss the bill." Harlan blinked. "The bill?" "The invoice for the destruction of my studio, Heart and Thread," Erica replied, slamming the vellum down onto the walnut table. "As per the contract signed by Alpha King Desmond Valco, the pack is responsible for any secondary damages incurred due to pack-related conflicts. Your younger, stable alpha, Gavin, doused $80,000 worth of Italian wool in industrial oil. He smashed vintage equipment that took me 6 years to source. Total damages, including the breach of the security contract you failed to uphold, $250,000. She leaned over the table, her face inches from Harlan's. Now, the bank currently holds the deed to my parents' old pack house, the one you let them lose 20 years ago because they were too low born to help during the Great Shift. I am the Luna of this pack now. And as Luna, my first official act of accountability is to demand that this council pays that invoice directly to the bank to settle the deed. You cannot be serious, Harlan spluttered. You are using PAC funds for a personal estate? I am using PAC funds to settle a debt of PAC-sanctioned negligence, Erica countered, her silver tape measure catching the light. If you refuse, I will take this invoice to the alpha families I've spent years building relationships with, the ones who value my hobby more than your outdated opinions. I'll tell them the Iron Ridge Council is insolvent and refuses to honor its contracts. How do you think that will affect the summit? The room went silent. Desmond was staring at her, his golden eyes wide, a slow, proud smirk spreading across his face. He leaned back on his cane, the pain in his hip forgotten for a moment as he watched his mate dismantle the most powerful men in the territory with a piece of paper and a sharp tongue. She's right, Harlan, Desmond rumbled, his voice filled with a newfound vitality. Accountability is the backbone of the Iron Ridge. If you can't pay the lady for the mess your initiative-taking favorite made, then you aren't fit to sit in those chairs. Harlan looked at the invoice, then at Erica's unwavering gaze, then at the massive Alpha King who looked like he was ready to bite the head off anyone who disagreed. We will review the legalities, Harlan managed to choke out, his face a sour shade of gray. Do that, Erica said, straightening her blazer. You have 24 hours. After that, I start making phone calls. And I believe the Alpha of the Silver Peak owes me a favor for that bulletproof tuxedo I made him last month. She turned on her heel and walked back to Desmond, sliding her hand into his. The link between them was singing, a chorus of victory, heat, and mutual respect. Let's go, Desmond, she said, her voice loud enough for the whole hall to hear. I believe we have a chili dog date, and I'm starving. As they walked out, Gatsby trotted along behind them, his tail held high like a fluffy gray flag of triumph. Chapter 25. The 24-Hour Ultimatum. Erica had issued to the council hung over the Erie like a sharpened blade. Desmond spent the morning in the war room, his black cane leaning against a wall of monitors as he and Elias tracked the digital breadcrumbs Gavin had left behind. Through the psychic link, Erica could feel the low, steady thrum of his concentration, a grounded heat that made her ribs ache a little less with every passing hour. She was in the guest wing, meticulously cleaning her steel shears with a soft cloth, when her tablet chimed with a grainy, final transmission from a hidden backup camera in her studio. The lens now partially obscured by the black oil dripping down the walls. Erica, stay where you are. Desmond's voice rumbled through the bond, sharp with a protective spike of adrenaline. I'm not a seam in a sleeve, Desmond. I don't just stay put, she whispered, already grabbing her silver tape measure. She moved to the window. In the driveway, parked with the bold entitlement of someone using stolen council clearance codes to bypass the outer gates, sat Gavin's familiar, flashy sports car right behind the black Mustang. He had returned, but he wasn't alone. He was flanked by 3 members of the council's private guard, men who should have been loyal to the Alpha King. Initiative, Erica spat, recognizing the word Harlan had used. She made it to the foyer just as the front doors were forced open. Gavin stepped in, his neon-bright suit now rumpled and stained with what looked like grease from the ruined studio. His face was twisted into a mask of desperate, mottled rage. He held a high-frequency disruptor, a device meant to scramble a shifter's senses, in his shaking hand. "Erica, get down here!" Gavin screamed, his voice cracking. "I'm taking what's mine. The council has authorized a temporary transition. Desmond is too old, too slow, and too obsessed with a tailor to lead." Desmond emerged from the hallway, his limp pronounced but his presence gargantuan. He didn't have his cane. He used the wall for balance, his golden eyes glowing with a lethal, ancient light. "The council has authorized nothing but their own embarrassment, Gavin. You're a thief and a coward." "I'm the future!" Gavin shrieked, activating the disruptor. A high-pitched whine filled the foyer. It was like a punch to the gut for Desmond, whose sensitive hearing made him stagger. He hit the floor on one knee, his hand clutching his signet ring as if to anchor himself. The guards moved in, their faces stoic. But the disruptor didn't affect Erica the same way. As an Omega with latent shifting abilities, her senses weren't tuned to the same alpha frequencies. She didn't scream. She didn't shift. She moved with the athletic precision of a woman who spent her life working with razor-sharp tools. She used the foyer's decorative black marble pedestal, a dry, solid twin to the ill-fated fountain column in the ballroom, as a pivot. Whipping around the stone with the practiced grace of a woman who handled miles of silk, she lunged and swung her heavy steel shears. She didn't aim for Gavin. She aimed for the device. The cold steel connected with the plastic casing of the disruptor, smashing it into Gavin's chest. The whining stopped instantly. Gavin let out a whimpering yelp, clutching his bruised ribs. "Accountability, Gavin," Erica said, her forest green blazer sharp against the chaos. "You forgot that I don't just sew clothes. I build structures. And yours is falling apart." Desmond was back on his feet in a second. He didn't shift. He didn't need to. He grabbed Gavin by the lapels of his cheap, flashy jacket, lifting him until the younger man's feet dangled off the ground. "You touched my mate's studio," Desmond growled, the sound vibrating the very foundation of the eyrie. "You threatened my daughter. And now you've brought your filth back into my home." "The council, they promised," Gavin wheezed. "The council is currently reviewing a $250,000 invoice," Desmond said, his voice dropping to a terrifying, quiet hum. "And they don't like losing money." Chapter 26. Desmond didn't kill Gavin. That would have been too merciful and too messy for the legal battle ahead. Instead, he dragged the younger wolf toward the back terrace, overlooking the jagged cliffs and the churning gray water of Lunaris Bay. The council guards, seeing the Alpha King's raw dominance return, had already retreated to the gates, realizing they had backed the wrong horse. Gavin scrambled to his feet, backing toward the stone railing. He tried to muster a snarl, but it looked like a pout on his tear-streaked face. "You think you're so great because you have a fancy house and a title? You're a relic, Desmond. You're a ghost. You can't even walk without a stick." Desmond stood tall, his swimmer's shoulders broad against the moonlight. He stood without the cane, his weight shifted slightly to his right, but his posture was absolute. "You have youth, boy," Desmond rumbled, the sound carrying the scent of cedar and scorched clove. "You have speed, and you have arrogance. But you lack discipline. You think power is something you take. I've spent 20 years learning that power is something you earn by holding the pieces together when everything wants to rip apart." Gavin lunged, a desperate, undisciplined strike. Desmond didn't even shift, Igniting a surge of alpha adrenaline to override the screaming protest of his hip, he moved with the ghost of his former speed, using combat skills honed by decades of pack wars to sidestep the younger wolf. He caught Gavin's arm, the same one he had squeezed in the foyer days ago, and applied a pressure that made Gavin scream. "You prefer younger men, Erica?" Desmond called out, his eyes never leaving Gavin's. Erica was standing by the glass doors, her silver tape measure wrapped around her knuckles. "I told you, Desmond, they're fast fashion. They don't have the soul for a long-term fit." Desmond turned back to Gavin. "You aren't a wolf. You're a stray." With a sudden, powerful shove, Desmond sent Gavin sprawling toward the driveway. "Get out. If I ever see your scent on my land again, I won't use my hands. I'll use my teeth. And I believe I mentioned, I bite much harder than you do." Gavin didn't wait. He scrambled into his sports car, the engine screaming as he tore down the drive, nearly clipping the gates. Desmond stood there for a long moment, the adrenaline receding. He leaned heavily against the stone railing, his left hip finally giving out. He let out a ragged breath, the predatory glow in his golden eyes finally receding into a warm, exhausted amber. Erica was at his side in a second. She didn't say anything. She just slipped her shoulder under his arm, supporting his weight. Through the bond, she felt his exhaustion, his relief, and a deep, shimmering pride. "You did okay for an old man," she whispered. "I had a good tailor," he replied, kissing the top of her head. Chapter 27, 6 weeks later. The atmosphere at the Eyrie had shifted from a fortress of secrets to a home of vibrant noise. The council had paid the invoice. Harlan had realized that a lawsuit from a master tailor with Erica's connections would be more exorbitant than the debt itself. Erica sat at the kitchen island, a cup of coffee in her hand and a stack of legal documents in front of her. The deed to her parents' pack house sat on top, the ink of the bank's release still fresh. It was finally hers. Equity. "Gatsby, get off the legal papers," she muttered. The 20-pound rag doll was currently sitting on the deed, his blue eyes fixed on a contractor who was finishing the repairs on the heavy front doors Gavin had forced open, before moving to the back terrace to fix the stone railing. Maya walked in, wearing a new hoodie Erica had designed for her, one with hidden pockets for her sketchbooks. "The fountain in the city is fixed," Maya said, hopping onto a stool. "Elias says they used a reinforced black marble so it won't crack if a certain Alpha King decides to throw a rogue into it." "Good to know," Erica grinned. Desmond entered from the foyer, and the change in him was the most striking of all. He was wearing a new suit, a charcoal gray with a subtle forest green pinstripe that matched Erica's favorite blazer, saving the remade deep cobalt masterpiece for their formal coronation. He walked with a much lighter limp. The physical therapy Erica had insisted on, combined with the invisible gussets in his trousers, had given him back his mobility. "The council sent a gift," Desmond said, holding up a small, velvet-lined box. Erica opened it. Inside was a silver thimble, engraved with the crest of the Iron Ridge Pack. "A peace offering?" she asked. "An acknowledgement," Desmond corrected, leaning over to kiss her mating mark. "They've officially recognized you as Luna. Harlan even asked if you could look at his robes. Apparently, he thinks they're dusty." Erica laughed, the sound bright and full. "Tell him I'm booked for the next 6 months. I have a pack house to restore." "We have a pack house to restore," Desmond whispered. "Partnership, remember?" Maya rolled her eyes. "Are you two going to be this gross forever?" "Yes," they said in unison. Chapter 28. The grand opening of the new Heart and Thread studio was the event of the season in Lunaris Bay. Located on the ground floor of Erica's restored pack house, the space was a masterpiece of glass, wood, and the scent of spiced pear. Erica was in her element, wearing a sharp, tailored dress of deep indigo. She was talking to a young alpha from a neighboring pack who was looking for a wedding suit. "I want something modern," the young man was saying, leaning a little too close to Erica. "Something that shows I'm the new blood. You know, I think a woman with your eye needs someone who can keep up with her." Erica arched an eyebrow, her silver tape measure draped around her neck. "Is that so?" Before the young man could respond, the front door chimes rang. The room went silent as Desmond Valco stepped in. He looked magnificent in a three-piece suit of midnight wool, his golden eyes scanning the room until they landed on Erica. He didn't use a cane today. He walked with a slow, powerful gait that commanded the air around him. He walked straight to Erica, ignoring the young alpha, and wrapped a heavy arm around her waist. He leaned down, his scent of cedar and clove marking her presence more effectively than any word could. "Everything all right here, Luna?" he rumbled, his voice dropping into that low, dangerous frequency. The young man paled, his new blood confidence vanishing. "Oh, Alpha King, I was just discussing the lapels." "Lapels are important," Desmond said, his golden eyes flashing with a touch of humor. "But make sure you don't overreach. My mate has a very low tolerance for dusty behavior." The young man stammered an excuse and beat a hasty retreat toward the silk displays. Erica turned in Desmond's arms, patting his cheek. "You're still a bit territorial for an old man, aren't you?" Desmond smirked, pulling her closer. "I told you, Erica. I don't do casual. And I'm not as old as I used to be." "No," she whispered, leaning in to kiss him. "You're a classic." Outside, parked side by side in the reserved owner spot, sat the pristine black Mustang they had arrived in, and the mint green Fiat 500, which now served as the studio's official mascot. The Fiat had a brand new rear bumper and a purring engine that no longer clinked. Inside the shop, Gatsby was asleep on a pile of high-twist wool, dreaming of chasing alphas. The story was finished, the seams were tight, and for the first time in their lives, the fit was finally perfect. The end. Quick favor, don't scroll away. If you thought Erica had a death wish for telling a possessive alpha she prefers younger men, just wait until you see the trouble the heroine gets into in this next story. The drama is next level. Click that video on your screen right now. Trust me, you need to hear this.